Okay, fellas, so in conclusion, we have observed how critical it is to place that nozzle directly flush with the face. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this thing right where I know it wants to be here, where I'm completely concentric. That's not the spot. I'll do a little tuning right there. We got orifice all the way around that tube. I'll have to take this off to do that. But at any rate, when I find that spot, I'm going to go ahead and just solder this in place, because that has a tendency to want to move. As you're jostling this hose around, that's what was happening. It was moving. So, in conclusion, it is critical that we flush those two surfaces together. We have the oil traveling down this inner spear and the air and the annulus. There is an issue here though. Because this oil spear is so small, it would be ideal if we had a configuration like this, guys. If we had a bigger pin stock that was, say, this large. Man, I'm freehanding here with a camera. Give me a break. If we had something that big and then reduced this section, the amount of oil you will pump would increase drastically. Probably 3 to 4 times, 3 or 4 fold. That's an educated guess, but from experience I know that the one shortcoming this device has is the length of that tiny little air spear is just too long. We probably would have been better off doing something better. I know it sprays water fine and all that, and it looks great, but tomorrow we're going to be trying this bad boy out. And this monster right here, which is pretty much a compilation of some help I've got from a couple other YouTubers. I'd like to thank, again, Delicious to Blair for talking me into the convergent nozzle. So that's where we're at. I'm going to be hooking that thing up to this tomorrow. And I have a feeling it might not be able to self-siphon enough oil to run itself on just air. I typically use pressurized oil, where I will slightly pressurize the oil with a special pump that I've made. One way to get around that is we can also elevate the oil source up higher than the nozzle. That way, once the siphon begins, you'll get a little bit of that added siphon pressure. But I'm thinking, because this tubing is so small, it might not be a siphon nozzle, meaning it might not siphon enough oil to actually run a waste oil burner. You have to have the proper air to oil input ratio to get those things to burn. And I've built enough to know that you sometimes don't always hit that target. That's why people are buying these Delavan nozzles and they're not working. Stuff like that, you know. However, this nozzle is a freaking win. I am amazed at how well this turned out. I will do my best to ensure that this was as obvious as possible as how to build it. Essentially, you don't have to build it like this, guys. Your main objective is this thing right here. If you can pull this off, if you can have air coming around an oil pipe, and you can have a very small gap in between that oil pipe, that gap is essential. This has to be extremely small, you guys. I used a drill bit that was the exact same size as the spud itself, because oftentimes a drill bit will drill a hole slightly bigger than itself. It doesn't make the hole the same size. It wouldn't work well if it did, if you think about it, you know. So, at any rate, that's your objective. And I have noticed that when this is perfectly flush, your vena contracta is the most powerful. Now, as I said, this position may not atomize the best. When you get it back here, it won't siphon at all. When you get it out here, I think it doesn't siphon as well. I think it makes the particles smaller. There's just less of them. So you may find it better to actually mess with this when we're using oil. You would never really want to set this in stone unless you're actually using the fluid that it's going to operate on. I, however, think it's safe to go ahead and just solder this where it is, because I'm going to be using pressurized oil on it most likely anyway. But so many people asked for instructions on how to build the last couple, and I had very poor footage on the construction process, so I hope this kind of hits it home for you guys. It's really simple. The only thing you're going to have problems with is finding that tiny little brass piece of tubing. And as I said, I provided a link in the description where you can get a hold of that little piece of brass. So there you have it, fellas. Tomorrow we're going to see this thing cranking out about 40 to 100,000 watts, hopefully, with that waste oil burner. But that's going to be in a different video.